It's been an odd year in terms of photography. There are images that I've got which I couldn't be more pleased with, and then there are other images that I think actually I've missed the point of that photo. I've missed the whole thing. It's been a really, really steep learning curve. You know, I only took photography seriously from February last year, the end of February last year, and before that I was doing photos with my iPhone, and I was quite happy doing photos with my iPhone until I went to a zoo, and the animals were a very long way away, and the iPhone just didn't cope with it. It didn't produce the quality image that I wanted, even quality enough to post on Instagram, which is really what I was wanting to do in the first place, just have an interesting Instagram feed. At that point, I wasn't worried about followers, I wasn't worried about exposure or about leading lines or about any of the many things that we start to look for when you actually take photography seriously. I just really wanted to get a relatively nice image to post on Instagram, and everything would have been fine. That all came about because I was going out with my parents. I was taking my parents to various different places. We went to a zoo, we went to the Newent Birds of Prey Centre, which is absolutely fantastic, and I've got one of the images that you'll see today was taken at that location, and I couldn't be more pleased about it. It's really good. But that itself came from a need to get out of the house. I have a job where I'm largely stuck at a computer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There were, in the past, weeks that went by where I didn't really talk to another normal human being. We have online chats now so that people who are in the industry that I'm in can actually get together and speak to normal people on a regular basis, because actually for a lot of us it's a relatively isolating job. And so I got into photography a little bit more, and at first it was iPhone photography. I bought the Moment lenses, which are really good. I wouldn't say don't go and buy Moment lenses. They're absolutely fantastic. You have the 18mm, the really wide angle lens. You've got the 58mm, which is a telephoto lens. They're both really quality glass. And actually, my iPhone and those Moment lenses were the lenses that I took around York when we went to York, because actually, if you're in a city, sometimes having an iPhone is a little bit less assuming than having a DSLR on you. Sometimes it pays not to look too much like a tourist. But really, that was just the first step in what's led me to take photography seriously. Just after I bought the Moment lenses, my mum said to me, look, if I lend you a camera, if I give you a camera, why don't you go out and see how you get on with a DSLR? So I did. I got her old Nikon D7000 and I went out with it, and I got on really well. I wasn't actually expecting to get on as well as I did. I thought all of the buttons, all of the dials would cause problems, that I wouldn't quite get the exposure right, that I wouldn't quite understand the relationship between everything. But actually, once you get into the field and start taking photos, and now, of course, where you can take a look at the back of your camera and suddenly you can see the photo you've got, and suddenly your head goes, no, that's not quite right. If I just move over here, if I just, tilt the camera this way, if I just do that, suddenly you can see where you're going wrong, you can see where you're going right. And it was, again, a steep learning curve, but not one that I felt was too difficult at any point. At no point during the time when I've been taking photos have I gone, I can't do that. There have been several points where I've gone, I could do with a different bit of equipment to make this easier. And there have been a few times that I've gone, if only I could get to this location at this time, that would have been a really good shot. But at no point have I thought, no, it's impossible for me to do this particular shot or these particular things. And that's been really great. It's been really freeing, liberating. I started posting nothing but photography on Instagram. I've grown followers on that. I've set up a YouTube channel this year. I've entered competitions. I've had my work shown in galleries around the world, which anybody can do, by the way. That's not a particularly special thing. But for me at the time, it was. Because it was something that I wasn't really expecting to be able to do so soon after picking up a camera. And if I can do it, I think anybody can do it. There are some very basic things that you need to understand. You need to understand a bit about compensation. No, you don't. You need to understand a bit about composition, and I think as soon as you understand the rule of thirds, as soon as you understand there are things in your camera that will help make composition easier, then that's a massive leg up. You need to understand Lightroom, and again with Lightroom there's some very, very simple things that you can do. You can go and watch my videos on Lightroom, and as soon as you've done that, you kind of understand, okay, there are all of these things that I can do with Lightroom, and that's it. That's the process. If you're not wanting to change your images too much, if you don't want to take people out of backgrounds, and you know, in some instances actually Lightroom can do that relatively well, but if you're not wanting to make sweeping changes to your photos, but if you want to grade them, if you want to pull the best of that photo out, then Lightroom's an amazing tool because it's so fast, it's quick to use. You basically have a panel of stuff and you go through the panel, and that panel is every single step that you need in order to make your photo the photo that you want. So there are two things that I've learned in Lightroom that are just the most important things in the world. First of all, lens correction is incredibly important, and I didn't realize this until I started taking panoramas and started doing a little bit more landscapey stuff, but sometimes that lens correction can really make a difference, and can be the difference between a photo that looks good but looks a bit odd and actually a photo that looks proper. I'm sure there's a better word for it than that, but I just don't know what it is right now. And the other thing, of course, is gradients. The radial gradient in particular is an amazing thing. If you want your viewer to have their eyes drawn to a particular part of an image, then it needs to be either the lightest, the brightest, the most colourful part of that image. And radial gradients mean that you can actually manipulate the light in your photo in order to do that. And there are some pretty big leaps and bounds in terms of editing my photos that I've made just on understanding that in Lightroom. So it's been a pretty exciting year. I've set up this channel for a start. I didn't think I'd be doing this at the beginning of 2019 because it's a lot of work, and you don't think that you're going to do something that suddenly is a lot of work and doesn't necessarily get you an awful lot back. But those little gains, those little achievements that I've made along the way are really good. I'm now at a point where I've got my own website online, which I've made myself, that I have had images printed, which I will eventually sell, but I've done some sort of test prints, really to make sure that the photos that I've taken actually hold up when they're printed. And you know what? They do, and I was surprised that they do. And I suppose really I shouldn't have been, and yet I was. I suppose you always have that imposter syndrome. You always have that moment where you think, should I really be doing this? Am I the right person to be taking photos or to be running a website or running a YouTube channel? The answer is probably yes, if you have a passion to do it, if you really want to do it. It doesn't really matter how good your images are, either technically or aesthetically, if you have an audience who likes those images. But of course, if you're taking photographs on a regular basis, then you want your photographs to be the best things in the world, right? So with that in mind, I wanted to show you my top 10 images from last year. And I'm going to start off with one. I should warn you, if you don't like snakes, then look away now, because it is an image of a snake, and it's the first image that I took of that I really thought, this is a good image, I could do something with this. It was taken at the Cotswold Wildlife Park, and the detail in this is amazing. And what surprises me time and time again is this was taken with my iPhone. And to me, that's a pretty amazing thing. Image number 9 is actually one that I got at the Birds of Prey Centre in Newend, and it's one that I'm incredibly pleased with. It was a bird in a cage originally, and again, this is using Lightroom's radial gradients, and this is really the first time I played with them, I was able to isolate the bird from the background and just bring in a little bit of the texture of the cage without actually, it doesn't look like it was done in the cage anymore. It kind of looks more like it was taken in the studio, and yet you didn't have to take the bird out of the environment that the bird was used to being in, which is probably a good thing. Not pin sharp, I have to admit, but actually for a first attempt, and this was relatively soon after picking up a camera as well. For a first attempt, I was really pleased with this one. And again, I think this is going to be a print that I make available somewhere. Now, I've not shown many of these prints before, but I did actually use this same process on 2 or 3 other birds that we took on the day. And I'm, again, really pleased with the results that I got from there. The other problem, of course, is this was taken with the D7000, and it's fewer pixels than the 7500, so I'm going to have to do a few experiments as to what size I can print on. I do know that I can print these at A4 and at A3, because I've done those on our printer, so in theory I should be able to expand them to at least 16 by 20, which is what I think most people, the sort of the biggest size that most people would want in their home. As soon as I started taking photos, one of the biggest things on my photography bucket list was a trip to Stonehenge. And actually, we went when it was incredibly nice weather, a really lovely day in terms of a day, but absolutely awful for taking photos. The light was very harsh, and of course it's Stonehenge. It's got a lot of visitors all the time. So when I got back into Lightroom to actually take a look at the photos, there wasn't a lot I could do with most of them. However, this one comes in at number 8. What I've done here is actually take the original image, and obviously you can see I've manipulated it probably to within an inch of its life. I hadn't done a lot of photo manipulation, so a lot of this was brand new stuff. And actually the Stonehenge set of photos was the first time that I was using some of the lighting techniques. So you can see on the stone on the right hand side, I've made the shadowy bits a lot bluer and the sunny bits a lot more like sun. This wasn't really the sort of image that I was wanting to get from the trip, but ultimately it taught me something that was very important. The final image is the thing. The most important thing is the way that that final image makes your viewer feel, makes you, the person looking at your photo, feel. Not necessarily, oh, you've used this technique and I don't like this technique, so therefore you're not a good photographer. I don't think that's true at all. I don't think it ever has been. But this really solidified in my mind that there was something that you could do here beyond just taking a photo and putting it into Lightroom just to pull up the colours. And actually that's where we get into photograph number 7 as well, which was taken on the same trip. Now they had these really nice Neolithic buildings at Stonehenge, and this particular photo was an attempt to capture that. And what I actually had to do in here, there were some children in the background from a school, and I had to remove the children from the background. But also, I think it was something that I saw when I was on location that cemented in my mind the idea that this would make a nice black and white photo. It's something about the way the straw in the middle of the photo is a little bit more illuminated. It's something about the way that there is a texture to this, that the sky itself actually looks quite pleasing, almost as if it's a long exposure shot, which it really isn't. That was what the clouds looked like on the day. And I do like even the floor of it, the texture in the floor. This is really a photograph about textures, and you can see that by using light and dark, I can highlight or diminish certain textures that you've got in the shot. And really, for me, I think that's what black and white photos are all about. And actually, I don't think I've taken much better than that photo, or edited much better than that photo in the interim, apart from the fact that some of the lion ones that we'll get onto later on are an absolute favourite of mine. Oh, and that Usk trip, and I'm getting there, that's what I'm saying. The next photo is, and I should say that all of these are in, they're not necessarily in the order that I think that they're best, they're in the order in which I took them. So the next trip I did was the Secret Forest, and that's actually one of the videos that you can see on the channel. You can join me as I take those photos, and you can see how I edited this photo in Lightroom as well. Again, this was really exploring the brush tool in Lightroom, where I've added in line strokes into the image to make certain parts darker and bring certain parts up to really shape the light in the image. And for me, what I really loved about this particular image was that the roots look like tentacles coming out of the ground, that they're coming towards you. Now, those roots are a really lovely leading line. Although there isn't, you know, that's the subject of the thing as well. There isn't something beyond it which would have been an interesting picture in itself. The roots themselves actually have an interest for me that I quite enjoyed exploring. This is one of the first trips that I did with the camera as well, with the 7500. And so there was a lot of exploring in terms of what that was capable of doing too. And of course, not long after, I took possibly my favourite picture from the whole year, which was this white lion. And again, you can see me taking the picture on one of the videos on the channel, and the edit for this is on the channel as well. I love this picture. I really, really love this picture. In fact, it was one of the first ones that I decided to print, because there's a nice shape to the way that the light is falling on. You've got this lovely modelling on the thing. And when I say modelling, I mean the way that you can play with the light to bring out certain parts of the face and to darken other bits down. It means that your eyes are really drawn to the important things. And there are a few things wrong with this image if I'm looking completely technically at it, if I'm pixel peeping at it. But actually, overall, the aesthetic of the image was something that I was really, really pleased with. The other image, actually, that is very similar to this, which didn't quite make it into the list of top ones, but is only very slightly behind, is this image of two white lions together. They're all taken from at the same time, all taken with the same camera, same lens and all, everything like that. But I think that the images that I've got of these particular creatures are some of the best work that I've ever done, and I worry honestly that I will never be able to take a picture as good as that again. But that's why you should join me for those photo trips, because I might be wrong, and you might see one day where I actually outdo myself in terms of taking a photo like that. This was one of the other things. It's clear to me now that I enjoy taking shots of wildlife, but I don't necessarily enjoy wildlife photography. And that's fine. You're allowed to do that. Just, you know, do photography the way that you want to do photography. And if it works for you, go for it. If that means that you're going to go to a lot of zoos and call yourself a wildlife photographer, I think it's all right, as long as the images that you take aren't just generic zoo shots. Image number 4 is arguably the best landscape shot that I've ever taken. This was taken at Reservoir, and I was very lucky really with the light that we had there on the day, because it had a really beautiful kind of glow to it. And at the same time, there was the mountain in the background where it was hitting part of the mountain and it wasn't hitting the other part of the mountain, and it really gave a nice sort of shape to the mountain. As well as that, you've got that reflection at the front. Now, clearly, had it been a completely still day and that water had been like glass, that would have potentially been a better shot. But there is something about this image that actually that says something, and I'm not entirely sure what it is, and I don't think I'd tell you if I was, because I think that's the sort of thing that you need to leave to an audience. Of course, I didn't stop taking pictures with my iPhone when it was more convenient. When I went to London, for example, I actually took my iPhone with me and the set of moment lenses, because again, carrying a DSLR camera around with you can give you some funny looks. Plus, I was there with friends as well, and I didn't want the fact that I was carrying a camera to be the all-encompassing thing about that day. Nonetheless, I did get this wonderful picture of the shard. I'm really, really pleased with it. And again, I was able to edit it as a black and white, and I was able to highlight bits that I thought were important and take bits away that I thought weren't. Out of all of the photos that I've got, this photo and the snake photo that I had right at the very beginning as well kind of cement the idea that actually you can take professional photos with an iPhone. The last two images on this list are the ones that I took in autumn at the Elan Valley. Now, it was a really lovely trip, and I genuinely love driving around the Elan Valley, so it was an absolute joy to go down. Again, there's a video available for it, but these two images are not on the video, and the reason for that was because I didn't necessarily know that there'd be anything useful for them. I took them at dusk. Arguably, I took them just in that period between what would have been golden hour, but there wasn't enough sun around, and what would have been blue hour, in fact was blue hour on that night. So they're technically blue hour shots, I think. And this first one is one of the, I think they're pump rooms, forgive me if I'm wrong here, and there's a beautiful reflection on this, and this is a case where you've got that kind of glass-like reflection in the water, and for me that says something. There is something very pleasing about the fact that you've got this reflection in the thing, this mirroring of the image. This is the sort of image that actually I don't think I would have taken when I first started taking photos, because it wasn't the sort of thing that I was looking for. I was looking for closer images. I was looking for, I don't know, I suppose something that looked a bit more chocolate boxy than this, because these last two photos, they don't quite look chocolate boxy. They are a bit more landscape photography, and that's not a bad thing. It means that I'm progressing. You know, I hope that the photos over the years show some sort of progression. Sure, differences between different styles and genres of photo, but still actual progression in the art. The final image was another reflection taken at roughly the same time of some trees in a pond, and the same is true with this. I wouldn't have thought about balancing out those trees with the reflection in the water. I wouldn't have looked at it. I would have looked at those trees and gone, they're a bit far away, I don't think I like that very much, and I just wouldn't have taken the image. And of course, I have taken hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of images this year, so those might be the 10 that I was most interested in taking. And you know, I've got some shots that I think are fantastic that I haven't shown you here today, but that wasn't really the point of this. I was just showing you 10 photos that actually I think show that after a year of taking photos, I'm doing all right. I'm actually really excited for the next step. I'd love to know what you've done over the last year. I'd love to know what things you've achieved, where you think you've gone wrong, where you think you've gone right, and possibly more importantly, I'd love to know what you want to achieve with your photography over the next year. Is it something that you think you're going to turn into a business? Is it something that you're happy with it just being a hobby? Do you want to improve as a landscape photographer? Do you want to take more wildlife? Do you want to take more model shots? Is portraiture the sort of thing that you're really getting into? What is it that you love? Because I genuinely believe that it doesn't matter where you live, there is always something that you can take. If you live in a city, taking a cityscape and treating that like a landscape photo, and using those same techniques to take buildings as opposed to mountains, you will still get some absolutely amazing results. And at the same, you know, if you live in the middle of nowhere, it doesn't mean you can't suddenly do portraiture. It's you can do whatever you want with photography. That's one of the great things about it. It's so vast, it's so wide, and I'd absolutely love to know what you think you're going to be doing in the next year, what you're excited about, what you want to try to get yourself out of a comfort zone, because that, I think, is incredibly important. Anyway, that's it for today. That's it for this particular photo vlog. Let me know what you think about the new format. It's not the format I'm going to use every time. This is just the kind of the second video of the week is a more sort of vloggy, more sort of chatty sort of thing. At least that's the intention anyway. Do leave a like and a comment if you liked it and want to comment, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more of these videos. If you click the little bell icon when you subscribe as well, it means you'll get a notification every time I put up a video. And for some people, that's the reason that they're on YouTube in the first place. A disclaimer, it might not be the reason that they're on YouTube in the first place. Until next time, thanks very much for watching, and I will see you probably with another photo trip. Bye for now.